Hey there, everybody. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's sector and index things to watch for next week. Let me go ahead and just hop right into it. So, last week I was somewhat, I guess I had hopeism and thought that maybe we might get a decent rally in the markets last week. Uh, through the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, it just didn't develop. We saw quite a bit of weakness. The interesting thing is that we didn't see a tremendous amount of fear. It was a low volume week. We'll see how this week plays out. We've got a couple of things that could impact the markets. We've got the Fed minutes, we've got the G20 meeting starting, we've got a couple other conferences, and of course, we've got some earnings to wrap up the earnings season. But technically, we kind of screwed up some of the things that I was a little bit excited about last week. And we're going to go ahead and go through that right now in the different sectors. So, IBB, we had put in a higher low, and now we are looking at a potential double bottom test. I mean, we're at an area where this price support right around $100, kind of want to see that hold. If we break down below 100, it could get ugly in the IBB fairly quick. So this is a very important spot. We'll have to see how this plays out this week, but we did manage to hold this area of potential price support. IWM, same thing. We had a higher low, but now we have come down and it looks as though we're doing a double bottom test. So another area of potential price support right around the 150, 145 area. We want to see that hold. If we lose that, we could see a pretty decent little sell-off in the IWM. So there are still some encouraging signs in a couple of sectors like the IYT, the transportation space. Still have we seem to be holding on to the higher low, and we'll see if maybe we can break back above this 50 or 200 day moving average. Now, look, we've got the death cross. I mean, I wrote in the blog that, this could be the beginning of a secular bear market. We'll have to see how it plays out. There is some very controlled selling. I mean, last week we did not see a big, a big spike in the VIX. There wasn't a big spike in fear, even though we had a pretty significant drop in several of the indexes. It's actually been a very controlled move lower, and that's somewhat concerning. We've got death crosses on a lot of different sectors. We've got them on a couple of indexes, and it's concerning. But we'll have to see how this plays out. I think this is such a huge week with the G20 and the trade talks between Trump and Xi. We'll have to see how this plays out. But if it disappoints, that could be the catalyst that really does put some fear into the markets, and maybe we get a more of a significant pullback. And in that case, if we don't have any good news on trade, fear could stick around for a while. So, look, I talk about the fact that we could potentially get a snapback, but we have to see some good news, and maybe we get some selling into the event, which starts on the 30th, right? Maybe we get some selling, and then we get good news out of the weekend, and that gives us a nice big snapback. We'll have to see how it plays out, but Qs, right? You got several big tech names that are in bear market territory. Mostly all of the FANG names. You've got Qs that actually took out the recent October lows, so that's a little bit concerning. Now we are approaching, I think down into this 155 area. Maybe we have some price support in that area, but not looking good in tech land. We'll have to see how this plays out. I'm not crazy about the fact that we did make a new low compared to that October low. So still some concern there. SMH, another one that's looking at a potential double bottom test. That was one of the leading spaces, one of the leading sectors. Technically not looking real great right now. We did get a little bit of a bounce back in NVIDIA last week. We got a little bit of a bounce back in AMD. Let's see what happens with these things next week, but want to really see this double bottom hold as support. SPXS, last week we're talking about the potential for a head and shoulders pattern there, and we could be coming back up to test this recent high. So we'll have to see how this plays out. The S&P 500 potential double bottom test as well. 260. If we lose 260, there is a likelihood that maybe we come back down and test somewhere in this 250 area, where we had this big spike down back here, 255, 250, and I think we would need to see that hold as support to maybe get a nice, look. So if we get some kind of a capitulation move down into the 250 area, then maybe we are set up for some type of a snapback play. But we're guilty till proven innocent in a lot of these sectors and indexes. TVIX, even though like I said, we had the big drawdown, we didn't have a big spike in volatility. So let's see how this plays out next week. USO is just been bloody, right? Look, you got some funds that are just being blown up out there between the natural gas and oil moves, very dramatic moves. At some point, I do think we get a bounce in oil. When that happens, I don't know. Nobody knows, but we've had a pretty dramatic move in a very short period of time. You've got Russia and Saudi Arabia and President Trump all going to be at the G20. Could be something that comes out of that. In reference to oil, we'll have to see how it plays out, but starting to get a little extreme here, but things can stay that way. So be careful in the oil and energy name. I do like a couple of names that I think are interesting for swing or long-term hold consideration, WTI being one of them. And I could look to actually start a position next week. UUP, the dollar has been strong. If it remains strong, that could continue to be a drag on the markets. And I think that's something that you want to keep an eye on. UVXY is just another volatility measure to keep an eye on. It is testing this trend line, and that also had a potential head and shoulders pattern. We'll have to see how this plays out this week. Aerospace defense also doing a potential double bottom test here of the recent area of potential price support, the low in October. Have to see if this holds, but we've got the same pattern on a lot of these indexes. Home builders has continued. Now this was one of the sectors, this one and building materials, that kind of led the decline. They started dropping before any of the other indexes, and they seem to be kind of holding up the best right now. So I kind of find that somewhat interesting. We've got the Fed this week. If the Fed sounds a bit more dovish, maybe we see a bit of a bounce or a continuation move in the home builders and these building material names. We'll have to see how it plays out this week, but that is somewhat encouraging to me. So we'll have to see how that continues to develop. Now, energy, as I said, oil making new lows. You've got energy that is, starting to get to it may be getting to an area where it's a little bit oversold. We could see a snapback. We'll have to see. But XLE lost this area of potential price support. We'll have to see how this plays out. Maybe we get a snapback there next week. Financials still has as of now, made a higher low. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, been active in the banks. I think it's something to keep an eye on. These are usually typically big, thick stocks and more swing or long term hold considerations. And, rising rate environment, banks typically do better. But we'll have to see what happens here. I'm not super crazy about the way this closed. It did fill this gap. We'll see how the financials react next week, but those are more swing or long-term hold considerations. Goldman Sachs certainly didn't help that space. Industrials, so far making a higher low. Could be an interesting sector to keep an eye on. XLV Healthcare actually also putting in a higher low and at a potential trend line support area. We'll have to see what happens there. But consumer discretionary and let's see, did I do retail already? Well, you know what? I think I have to look at the next page. Consumer discretionary kind of did a little double bottom test here. We've got a conference on casino, hospitality and casino gambling conference that's going to be happening this week. That's been a space that has been extremely beaten up. I think as we get retail numbers out of Cyber Monday and Black Friday, maybe we get some kind of a bounce there. But this is a bit of a concern on the consumer discretionary. And then oil, this is oil exploration. It's another one that's just, following the oil move. Could see a snapback there, but we'll see how it plays out. And then retail, I think, we had a pretty dramatic pullback here. Had actually decent numbers out of Target, and that thing got taken out to the woodshed. As these numbers come in from Black Friday and Cyber Monday, maybe we see a bounce in the retail space, and we do have an area of potential price support here as well. So bit of an extreme move there in retail, so I do think that's a sector to keep an eye on. Another space that I put in the blog is the cannabis space. I think we want to keep an eye on cannabis. Could get some legislation. We're going to get some legislation out of New Jersey, and then we're also going to possibly get something happening on the farm bill. That's supposed to happen sometime in the near future here. And if they do legalize hemp, well, then I think that could be a little bit of a catalyst for that space. So worth keeping an eye on that. All right, so that's my take on the sectors. We've got earnings next week. We're wrapping it up. We got Salesforce.com. I think that's going to be a big one in terms of how the markets may react, especially tech. Box could be an interesting one. Shift Pixie. I didn't look at the chart on that one, but that is of interest to me. GameStop, announced that they're selling off a division for about $700 million. Between that and the cash they have on hand, that they could actually get rid of their debt. So that's kind of interesting. Have to see what their earnings look like, but that's one I'm definitely keeping an eye on as well. Smuckers could be one. I like some of the packaged food names. They are on my list. There's another one here. Let's see, Kush Bottles. That's a cannabis play. I'm very interested in that one. They report after the close. They don't actually touch anything cannabis, but they do packaging for cannabis, and I think that's an interesting one to keep an eye on for their earnings report. But that is the breakdown on the ones that I'm really kind of paying close attention to. A lot of retail next week. I'm not a big retail fan, so that's pretty much my interest for next week in terms of earnings. And then let's take a look real quick at the T2106 and the T2108 and the T2107. So we've got the McClellan oscillator, right? And this is, again, not a big, not a lot of fear out there, right? We're still, fear is down here when you get this negative 200, negative 150, and we're just kind of fiddle in the middle. So there's just not a lot of fear out there. Maybe we get that next week heading in. Maybe we want to send a message to Trump heading into the G20 meeting that you better get something done or bad things are about to happen. Maybe that picture will be painted next week. I don't know. We'll have to see. T2107, stocks that are above their 200-day moving average, getting to this 20 and below level, and that is the level where things could be getting a little overdone on the oversold side. So worth keeping an eye on this, breaking below 20. Same thing with the T2108. Now that is looking a little bit better than the T2107. This is the amount of stocks that are above the 40-day moving average. But if this breaks down below 20 or starts to get into the single digits, that could also be an indication that things are getting overdone. So keep that in mind. All right. It's going to be an interesting week between the Fed, the G20, some of these earnings that are coming up. Right now, technically, as I said, the markets are looking guilty till proven innocent. However, ironically, there are still some pretty good individual stock setups out there. I've got quite a few on this week's list of stocks to watch for the pro members, and I'll be sharing those with them first thing tomorrow morning. If you're interested or like what I do and you're interested in getting that list of stocks to watch every week, then consider signing up as a member of Alpha Wolf Trading for only $197 a year. That's it. Plus you get chat and all kinds of other stuff. There are educational videos, about 10 hours worth of that stuff. My trades, my swing trade plans, all kinds of stuff. So take that into consideration. If not, that's fine. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the rest of it. Good luck next week. This is not a market that you want to be overly aggressive, right? So you want to continue to trade. You want to continue to dip. You want to dip your toe. That's fine. Just make sure you do it size appropriate. Make sure you have a plan and always know your risk reward. All right, that's it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you all next week.